Welcome to another episode of the Bible Toolbox. I'm Lydia.
And I'm Luke, and we're here to help you enjoy the Bible through the tools that scholars and programmers have created for you.
All right, what do we have today?
Today, we are going to talk about word study contexts.
All right, so last time we talked about word study fallacies and
Yes.
what not to do.
Right.
Are you going to tell us what we should do this time?
Kind of.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to talk about, last time we ended on this slide. Okay. We talked about, fallacies, what not to do.
Mhm.
And I just gave a little bit of things. What should we do? And so rather than saying the Greek word literally means and say something like check it, all of its senses and its context and so on, and say this Greek word can mean, or in similar context, this Greek word means.
Yeah, because it can change and all that good stuff.
And so then we talked about this idea of different categories to look at.
Like the passage, it's like in its context with its story and its verses around it. And
yes.
Then within the book, does this author use the same word across the book? And then does that author use the same word in multiple books, like John using through all of John or all of that? And then canon in the New Testament or Old Testament or whatever. And then culturally, just like how did that time period use that word?
Right. Yes. And so those are different in the Old Testament and New Testament. Different cultural context of different time periods.
Time past.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about these different contexts and then different tools to understand the word in that context.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And the reason being, this is biggest point of this episode. If you want to get good at doing word studies, imitate people who are good at doing word studies.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And so there are scholars, people who have devoted their lives to word meaning and stuff. And so I'm going to show you those resources.
Of where we can find the professional people doing their studies.
And then we can read those and just over time, if you just read a lot of word studies, you start to get a hang of what should I be looking for? What is this a meaningful difference and things like that.
And you can use these, in your own teachings and all of that. Like use what they've done.
Right.
Because they want you to.
Exactly. That's why they're here.
That's why they did it. Okay.
Scholars made for you. Okay. So looking at the New Testament first, we're going to kind of do our growing context. So the first one, what does a word mean in the passage? And so we've looked at how to use lexicons. Thayer's lexicon is
which are really dictionaries. Check out our episode on lexicons and dictionaries.
Yes. So like Thayer's lexicon, it'll give you like the different meanings of the word. Like a word can have different multiple meanings. And then it'll put, like, if you're studying a certain verse, it'll say, meaning number 1, and then it'll have your verse under there. Like it catalogs all the verses and when they have a certain meaning. Okay. So it's helpful for that. Yeah. You can just look at the lexicon and see where your verse is at.
And then what meaning it's under.
Yeah, in that context. Right. So Thayer's lexicon goes word by word and it's alphabetized, like in like a normal dictionary, right? When you look at a dictionary, you expect it to go from A to Z.
Yeah.
Right. Low-and-Nida, the second one here, is different. It doesn't go from A to Z. It is categorized by what's called semantic domains.
So domain being like categories.
Category.
And semantic being meaning.
Yep.
So meaning categories. Categories of meaning.
Categories of meaning. Okay. So let's look at an example here. So there's a free version online that doesn't give you all of the information. It just it basically just gives you the domains without the definitions.
Okay.
So it does. So right here, and it looks very not great.
Rough.
Yeah. But here, let's search Matthew 1:1 and let's just do this first word, which means book. And so here, if you go down to the Low-and-Nida section, it gives you 3 glosses. So these are 3 different domains or 3 different meanings that this word biblos has.
Whenever it's used.
Okay. Well, no.
Not whenever. Like,
but
when it's used, it has been used in these ways.
In three main ways. Okay. And so notice here, like here, it's used book, content, and 3352. So if I just click on 33, 33 is the semantic domain of communication.
Makes sense.
Okay.
For a book.
Yes. And if we try to find 52 right here, 35 to 68. So it's in the category of written language.
Even more.
Imagine that, right? When you click into that, so of the domains that are within communication and communication that is written language, you can see there are all these different words. And here's kind of their English glosses over here. So register, census, put on a list, a record, inscription, letter, writing, treatise, and then we get our books, which is biblion and biblos are two words for that they're translating as book. And so what Louw-Nida is helpful for is just getting synonyms, other similar words like your word. So here's all the words that are communication that is written document.
So if you're studying the word book, you might want to look in inscriptions or the scriptures if you're looking at a certain book, or
like what makes biblos distinct from graphe, or right? Sure. Like why use this word and not this one? And that's where kind of having these all lined up and their distinct meanings can help do that.
But it's helpful that it's categorized by meaning and not you're searching for all these words and you might miss some and not think of others.
Exactly. Like if I'm studying book, like what were books like in the ancient world? Like I'm going to miss information if I only studied the one word biblos, right? I missed biblion. I missed, logos and all these other ones that would also inform my search.
Okay. So Louw-Nida is more just bringing your attention to other words to pay attention to as well. Okay.
The actual dictionary is more full than that. Each word has a whole paragraph definition and explain it.
Not the free version though.
Not the free version, unfortunately. But we gave you a link to archive.org has Louw-Nida that you can check it out for an hour.
Of the actual book?
Of the actual book.
Okay.
And so you can kind of get a sense of what it's like there. Okay. And then last one, of course, if you're studying the passage, you come across a word you don't know, commentaries, study Bibles. And we have a whole episode on study Bibles and commentaries just for you that you can go and look. Commentaries are wonderful. Learn from them. Okay. So the next context is, so after your passage, looking at how is the word used in the New Testament as a whole. And there are several resources for this, but two that I'm looking at here. So the first one, the New International Dictionary of Theology, edited by Colin Brown, is, let me stop sharing real quick, is this 3-volume, over 3,000 words set. And so what this is 3,000 words, 3,000 pages of word studies, most words are in here in the New Testament. And what makes this really good for us is that it is categorized by English word.
Oh, and not by Greek or
not Hebrew, by Greek. So like Greek. Here, I just opened up to tithe. And so you can just, in English, if I was searching tithe, there it is. And it gives me all these different words.
A bunch of Greek words.
To give a tithe, give a tenth, give a tithe, collect a tithe, a tenth, so it gives me like all these Greek words that are used for tithing. Okay. So I didn't have to look up any Greek word, right? I don't need to know Greek to use this. This is why this is amazing and you should get it. And it's actually, for 3,000 pages, it's reasonably priced. Like a lot of these resources we're going to share are like hundreds of dollars. This is not. It's fairly good. So anyway, but you can see it gives like Old Testament use and background of it in secular literature. And then, it's just going to go through kind of all these major
tons of context.
The context that, we've already been talking about. So it just gives you a big word study all in one place just for you and in English, categorized by English, which is yeah,
hard to find.
Hard to find. There's not as many word study resources for people who don't know Greek and Hebrew that are accessible to them, sadly. Or, there's books that are not good, but these are good. These are done by top-notch scholars.
And is this linked on archive as well?
Well, only volumes 1 and 3. They left out volume 2. So yeah, you can look through volume 1 and 3 and just see what it's like, and maybe you'll buy it. Maybe you won't. The second one here is a similar. It's just more in depth. It's for people who know Greek and Hebrew. So the New International Dictionary of New Testament Theology and Exegesis. Okay. The NIDNTTE.
Wow, what an acronym.
There's also one for the Old Testament that we'll see, which is called Nidati. It's easier to say than this one. Takes out the vowel of the O. So we don't really know what to call this one. Okay, but similar idea, multi-volume word studies, but more for Greek and Hebrew. Okay, so another context. So if you want to look not just in the New Testament, but how about the Greek Old Testament?
How are these words used in Old Testament?
Yeah. And so a lexicon is Murioka, which just looks at the use of words in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Right. It's just a lexicon for the Septuagint.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. The papyri. Okay. So not only do we have the New Testament and the Septuagint in Greek, but there are all sorts of papyri that we've discovered of around the same time period in Greek. Okay. So
they just aren't biblical. They're just everyday life.
Yeah. Bank receipts, letters to home,
okay.
Whatever. And so Moulton and Milligan went through and read all of these.
Oh my goodness.
And compared the use of words used in New Testament to how they're used in kind of like the normal world around them. And then they have this lexicon here that we have the link to that just tells you how it compares. Is the way that it's used in the New Testament reflected in the way that it's used in the papyri and so on.
Very interesting. Yeah. Just everyday society. How would it use the words? Wow, people put a lot of work into language. That's awesome.
We gave the archive.org link there, but you can also buy it various places. Okay. Last context of New Testament Greek words is the Greco-Roman context. So papyri is kind of like the everyday life. Greco-Roman, think more like the literary works that are in Greek.
Plato, Aristotle.
Okay. Josephus, Philo, larger Greco-Roman authors and such. So Perseus is kind of an online website that has a lot of these resources that they have a lexicon as well. The LSJ is what it's called, where you can look at the meanings of words as they were in the wider Greco-Roman world. So like often you look on Thayer's and it'll give you, 3 meanings of a word. You look on Perseus and it'll give you like 5, because it's a wider context. Yeah.
So Thayer's would be restricted only to the Bible.
Yes.
Mainly.
Yes. Thayer's is a New Testament lexicon.
But Perseus is not.
Perseus is a
Greek
classical
lexicon.
Greek lexicon. So it's just a very wide Greek world. Okay. All right. The Theological Dictionary of the New Testament is
TDNT.
The TDNT, as you'll hear it called, is referenced in Blue Letter Bible. So I'm just going to search faith here.
The lexicon tab, like we learned in our episode.
Yeah. So if I click the Strong's word, and it gives you this page of just information of the word, and under dictionary aids, you'll see that it says TDNT reference. Okay. It doesn't, you click on the link and it just tells you info about the TDNT. So it doesn't link to the TDNT.
Okay.
But it gives you, like it says 6:174. And so the 6 is the volume.
Okay.
And then the 174 there is the page number. Okay.
So if you had it, you could find it.
Yeah. And so we gave some of the links here. I couldn't find all of them, but so if we just go to volume 6, click on it, open it, you can go to archive and you can borrow it for 1 hour.
Nice.
For free.
Probably need an account for that, but worth it.
Well, it's a free account.
Yep.
That you can get. And so then once it pops up, we go to page, what was it, 174? 174. And voila, pistevo, pistis, pistos. There's our use, our entry on faith. And so just look at the information here. Look at the amount of footnotes that you can follow up on. So it starts with classical usage, how it's used kind of in the Greco-Roman world, Hellenistic usage, Stoic usage, Old Testament concept.
There's so much information right here.
Yeah. And so it's comparing it to like the Hebrew words in the Old Testament, the different ways that this word translates Hebrew words.
Clearly a very thorough analysis of the word.
Overly thorough. That most people do not care about. Goes into faith in Judaism, Old Testament motifs, difference of the Old Testament, pistis in the New Testament. Okay. Get the point? Like, it's hitting it all, right? Very, very thorough word studies in TD&T. Very similar, as you said, but these are in English. Not as thorough, but English categorized. But TD&T is referenced in Blue Letter Bible with the page number, which also makes it easy to reference, navigate. As well. But that's going to be a bit more technical than the NID&T. I don't know, whatever we call that by Colin Brown. Okay, so that's the New Testament. Passage, New Testament, Septuagint, Papyri, Greco-Roman. Those are the contexts for studying words for the New Testament.
And where we can find them?
Yes. So the Old Testament has a fewer contexts to look at when we're doing a word study. So, but when in a passage, same idea. Brown Driver Briggs is the Blue Letter Bible lexicon that's used, similar to Thayer's. And then the Semantic Dictionary is similar to Lowen-Nida. So if I just click on this real quick, they actually have Lowen-Nida on there. They're still working out kinks. So this is not fully done yet. So they have the Hebrew. You can go to the domains and you can see the domains. This is very limited right now. It's still in process. They're working on it. But it will be a really cool resource someday. And then, of course, commentaries. You can look at words.
So the BDB is the equivalent of Thayer's, but for Old Testament.
For Old Testament.
So Hebrew. That will be just like the general lexicon that comes up on Blue Letter Bible.
Yeah.
When you can just generally use.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. And just like when we looked at faith here, TD&T came up under dictionary aids. If we look up a Hebrew word, so let's go to Aman in the Old Testament. So you can see down here, Brown
BDB.
Driver Briggs, BDB is here. But then up here in dictionary aids, it says TWOT.
Instead of TD&T.
Right. And that's this Theological Word Book of the Old Testament, which is also on archive.
Nice.
And it's only 1 volume, so it's not quite as thorough. And so you can borrow it for an hour and then you'll be able to see it. But it's still extra context and information for if you're doing a word study. They can look up. So that's the word in the Old Testament. You can also, we also have several ancient translations of the Old Testament that can be helpful for trying to understand words. And well, it's actually kind of funny. There are some words in the Old Testament that are just, it's old Hebrew. It's only used 1 time in the Old Testament, and we just don't know what it means.
Don't know what it means.
And you look it up in these other translations, and they don't know what it means either.
Sometimes you're out of luck.
Yeah. But yeah, it can be helpful because these people were ancient authors closer to the context, and sometimes they can give us insights. So we gave you a link here to Step Bible. And so ESV, NIV, KJV, all those translate the Masoretic text of the Hebrew. Okay. DRC stands for Douay Rheims, which is a translation of the Latin Vulgate.
Okay.
AB is a translation of the Septuagint, so the Greek. And then SPE here is a translation of the Samaritan Pentateuch, which we talked about with John Mead.
John Mead, right? I remember that kind of.
Yeah. So it's the Samaritans had a different version of the Torah.
Yes.
So you can look at those there on Step Bible. There's also the Targums, which are an Aramaic translation of the Old Testament.
So just a different language.
Different language, but it's
close to Hebrew, right?
Yeah, it's close to Hebrew. It's like the development of Hebrew, like as it goes on in history. And so these are actually like people couldn't understand the Hebrew anymore, and so they had to translate it. And so the Targums were the Aramaic, like glosses interpretation of the Hebrew text. So it's not just a translation, but it's kind of, it gives you a flavor. It's kind of like the Message translation of the Old Testament. There's actually some pretty bizarre stuff in there. Just
it's the warning.
Just it's kind of fun. But you can find some of them online with that link. And then, okay, the last one is the wider ancient Near Eastern world. So what did the Babylonians or the Egyptians, similar root words, how did they use them?
In the same context, same time period.
Yeah. And so TDOT,
like the TDNT, but
right,
for Old Testament.
For Old Testament is a similar resource. It'll give you all the ancient Near Eastern backgrounds and stuff.
Is that on Blue Letter Bible link?
It's not.
That would be the TWOT.
Yeah, unfortunately. I don't know why they didn't. Whatever.
Okay.
The TDOT is newer than the TDNT, and so that might just be it.
Okay.
And then the Nidoti that I talked about.
Oh yes.
NIDOTTE.
The Greeky, the geeky one.
Yeah. So it's a good lexicon for understanding all the context of a different word. Gives you word studies.
Wow, that was a lot of resources.
Yes. And listeners will probably use none of them except this one, right? We're going to use the English one that's categorized, and maybe the Blue Letter Bible ones that are linked.
Yeah, no, and it's good just to know where to go to find trustworthy sources, and just how to use them, and even like how to navigate the Blue Letter Bible a little bit more, like what it's talking about and all that. Yeah. That's good.
Yeah, and just to know that scholars have poured their lives into these words, and so use the work that they did. It's there for you
to use it. Yeah. And everything that's underlined in the slideshow is linked directly to the websites. And then we also have our resource page, has all the websites on it at once, is in our slideshow as well. And all of this will be posted on our website. So feel free to use it however you'd like, or share it, or whatever. So hopefully it's helpful to you in some way. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Bible Toolbox. All of the resources mentioned in this episode are posted on our website, thebiblettoolbox.com. There you can also find out more information on how to give and support us. And we have loved all of the encouragement and feedback we've received from you. So thanks so much.